Can a new handlebar fundamentally change a motorcycle? That's the question that Ultraviolette proposed to us with this, the brand new F77 SuperStreet. Now I know it looks almost identical to the Mach 2 which launched just 8 months back, and in most ways it is. But the big difference is up here. Where the Mach 2 gets low set clip-ons, the SuperStreet gets a one-piece handlebar which is quite tall and wide. But how much difference can that make?
First, let's look at what has stayed the same. The F77 SuperStreet is nearly identical in design to the F77 Mach 2. Sure, there are some slight variations in the paint schemes, but the SuperStreet still gets the same sharp LED headlights, the same fork covers, and even the massive side panels are unchanged. And because the SuperStreet's new handlebar and handlebar clamps are all black, even from a slight distance, it's nearly impossible to differentiate between it and the Mach 2. But I still believe that the F77 design looks good whether it's the Mach 2 or the SuperStreet. But the one issue we did come across is that the SuperStreet gets the exact same mirrors as the Mach 2. Now these work well on the Mach 2, which are sitting more leaned forward. But on the SuperStreet, the mirror mounts needed to be a little longer as you end up seeing more of your elbows than what's behind you. Even the internals of the SuperStreet are unchanged from the F77 Mach 2. You get the same standard variant with a slightly smaller battery pack and the less powerful motor with an IDC range of a little over 200 km. And you also have the top end variant with the larger battery pack and more powerful motor that promises you an IDC range of well over 300 km. You still have 3 riding modes: glide, combat and ballistic, and these can be thought of as eco, city and sport. But the F77's throttle calibration is just so good that you can pretty much be in ballistic mode all day long. It's very controllable and super fun at the same time. You also get 10 levels of regenerative braking. Now I know that might sound like too many options, but the ability to fine-tune regen braking to perfectly match your riding conditions is actually a big help.
And the handlebar has made a big difference in the way you sit on the F77. Now your back is almost 25 degrees more upright compared to that on the Mach 2, which means you're sitting fairly upright, almost like a proper naked roadster, something like the Duke 390 or something. And of course, the foot pegs are rear side just like the Mach 2, so the riding position overall is quite sporty, but it never feels as committed as the Mach 2, which means riding every day should be just fine.
You might think just changing a bike's handlebar is a very straightforward process. But Ultraviolette tells us that in order to maintain the F77's 50-50 weight distribution, even with the drastic change in riding position, was a fairly complex process. Ultraviolette had to re-engineer the top triple clamp and specially design the handlebar risers and the handlebar itself to work well in this new setup. What hasn't been re-engineered is the SuperStreet's underpinnings. It's got the same chassis and same suspension with the exact same tuning as well. You get a chunky upside down fork at the front and a monoshock at the rear, both preload adjustable. And this setup is a bit on the firmer side to manage the 200 odd kilo weight of the motorcycle.
The new Ergos have definitely made a big difference in comfort, not only when you're sitting on the bike, because of course the bars are tall, which means you have a lot less strain on your wrists and palms when you're just riding normally, but also the way it rides on bad roads, even that's changed. Now in the suspension, that's unchanged from the Mach 2, it is still rather stiff, but because you have less weight on the front end, the way it rides through bumps and potholes is just so much smoother. It almost feels like a regular everyday bike. You don't think you're riding a bike that weighs over 200 kilos on bad roads, which means riding this every day is now an absolute breeze. What's more shocking about the SuperStreet is the way it handles. Now the Mach 2 was already a good handling motorcycle, but let's face it, you could feel its weight in the corners. This one though, although it weighs the same, in fact half a kilo more than the Mach 2, is actually much lighter to steer in because it's got this nice wide handlebar which gives you lots of leverage. It turns into corners quite well. It's not super light like an R15 or something, but given this bike's weight, it's actually quite remarkable. And we're out all day on a go-kart track with tight hairpin turns, and that was handled by this bike just beautifully.
Features wise too, there's no difference between the F77 Mach 2 and the SuperStreet. The SuperStreet 2 gets dual channel ABS, hill hold, dynamic stability control, and even a 4-level traction control system. And it's got the same color TFT screen too with a host of connected features. But the screen has been tilted upwards compared to the Mach 2 to make it easier to read when you're sitting upright. And this makes the screen quite readable even in bright sunlight.
Now, whether you're talking about the F77 Mach 2 or the SuperStreet, essentially both bikes are nakeds. There's no full fairing, there's no bubble to tuck behind. But pay attention to this part right here. This has been made specially for the SuperStreet, and this actually deflects the air from the front right over the rider, even if you're sitting bolt upright. Now, I was riding at speeds of 130 kph sitting upright on the bike, and I could barely get any wind noise in my helmet. It looks very inconsequential, but it actually works remarkably well. At rupees 2.99 lakhs ex-showroom for the standard variant and rupees 3.99 lakhs ex-showroom for the Recon variant, the prices of the SuperStreet are the same as the ones of the F77 Mach 2. That said, the SuperStreet is a lot more easy to recommend to more people because it's a lot more comfortable and you can use it more often in more places. But is it enough to convince someone to make the jump into electric motorcycles? I'm still not very sure. But if you're in the market for an EV motorcycle anyway and don't mind spending the extra money considering the kind of performance you're getting from the F77, the SuperStreet makes the most amount of sense in any case.